Kenya, Mount Kenya, Mount Kenya.
Welcome to our first lesson in this course on group dynamics for social work. Even though this unit is targeted for students in social work, other students in, say, sociology, anthropology, or social sciences in general can also benefit from this unit. And for social work students, towards the end of the course, we will gear the unit towards material on social work. My name is Professor Kennedy Mutundu, Associate Professor of Anthropology, Department of Social and Development Studies at Mount Kenya University, Kenya. Let's start with our first lesson, the learning objectives in general, before we go to our lesson for today. For these overall learning lessons, we want our students to gain knowledge and be able to develop a critical understanding and practical appraisal of the following 6 areas. 1, we want the students to be able to define what groups are and isolate social groups as an area of interest, be able to know what group dynamics is. In this course, the students should be able to classify different types of groups and be able to describe key features and characteristics of these groups. We should be able at the end of the course to understand and explain how groups form, the purpose of groups, group structure, the roles of different members of the groups and its leadership, and how groups develop, what contributes to group cohesiveness, and how groups also dissolve themselves or fail in their objectives. And for this course, we are particularly interested in social groups as the focus of this course, as an instrument of social work for the social work students. For the next half an hour or so, we want to focus on these areas, define what a group is, how we define groups commonly, using common definitions, then look at authoritative definitions, what sociologists or anthropologists, how they define groups, then look at the sociality of groups, and also be able to say why a group is not a group, why certain gatherings of people may not qualify to be a social group, and of course be able to define what group dynamics is and the functions and functioning of groups. That's what we want to see we can cover for the next half an hour or so. Let's start with what is a group. Common references. These are common definitions. They are not authoritative, they are not anthropological. It is how you can perceive groups. Groups is something that we are used to using in common language and communication. Besides humans, in reference to animals, we can say a pride of lions, a herd of buffaloes, an ambush of tigers, a charm of hummingbirds, a parliament of owls. It is describing a congregation of animals. But for humans, we are concerned with this topic of groups because individuals form groups, even though they are individuals, but they live in groups. They move in groups, we work in groups, and groups influence behavior and personality. We cannot ignore groups, just the same way you cannot ignore individuals. So generally, when a number of persons are sitting or working together, when a group of people are working together, they constitute what we call a group. The essential thing is the physical proximity of a number of people. Physical proximity, when people are gathered together in a geographically defined area, they constitute what we call a group. Say a group of tourists in a park. It has no reference to anything else other than the physical proximity that defines that gathering of people. Another common reference is where persons are classified as belonging to a category of people. Sometimes it is seen that people may have no relationship at all with each other, but they have some common characteristics. They don't even know each other. They're not even geographically in a specific area, but we can classify them as a group, like a group of students, or a group of university students, a group of workers of a particular social class, a category. That may be used like that. Then the third way of looking at groups is where persons belong to an organization. Okay? This group has a definite structure, and people in this group have a sense of belongingness to that given organization, like members of a club. Let's go to now sociological authoritative definitions of what we mean by groups. Starting with McClever and Page, and I would like you to note down the words that I've put in red because they highlight the important feature of that definition. Let's start with McClever and Page in 1949. A group is any collection of human beings who are brought into social relationships with one another. So social relationships is what McClever and Page emphasize in defining what a group is. Ogbun and Nimkov defines a group in the sense that whenever two or more individuals come together and influence one another, they may be said to constitute a social group. So the word for Ogbun and Nimkov is influencing one another. To them, a group where that is constituted in any particular place and individuals are not influencing and affecting one another does not constitute a social group. For Robert and Merton, a social group is a number of people who define themselves as members of a group, who expect certain behavior from its members that they do not expect from outsiders. That is Robert Merton. And what Robert Merton is emphasizing is the identity of the people who are making up a group and the expectations that members of a group have of themselves as members of that group in distinction from another group. Three definitions there. Let's see one or two. So the important words there: social relationships, influence, members influencing one another, members identifying themselves and also looking at themselves as a group in distinction from another group. Two more definitions to help us understand this. And these definitions are focusing more on what social groups are. So this is critical here. For Williams, a social group is a given aggregate of people with interrelated roles and recognized by themselves as a unit of interaction. Interaction and interrelatedness is a critical component of social groups. Any gathering of people who do not have interrelatedness and interaction do not qualify to be a group. For McClever, a group, we mean any collection of social beings who enter distinctive social relationships. So, of course, people can interrelate, but these distinctive social relationships, because relationships will vary from one group to another, but for that particular group, the relationships must also be distinctive from another group. Good. And for David, from a psychosocial perspective, a group is an organized system of two or more individuals who are interrelated so that the system performs some functions, has a standard set of the role relationship among its members, and has a set of norms that regulate the function of the group and each of its members. Davis' definition carries a lot of information there. It is a system of 2, 3 more people that are interrelated and that have relationships and they have roles, and that these roles regulate their behavior and their function from a systems point of view. Good definitions of what social groups are. More definitions, 2 more definitions on social groups. Again, we are focused on social groups. You will see how some groups of people don't qualify to be social groups. Kretsch, Crutchfield, and Balaki, social groups, 2 or more persons who meet the following conditions. 1, the relations among the members are interdependent. Okay? Relations among others are interdependent. A group of tourists watching a herd of buffaloes, the activities are not interrelated. The members who are doing that are not interrelated. Each member's behavior must influence the behavior of each of the others. And the members share an ideology, a set of beliefs, values, and norms which regulate their mutual conduct. Okay, how about Paulus in 1989? A group consists of 2 or more interactive persons who share common goals, have a stable relationship, are somehow interdependent, and perceive that they are in fact a part of a group. Those authoritative definitions of social groups. So in summary then, what are we getting out of these definitions? 1 is interdependence among members of a group. For an individual to accomplish their part in any assigned task, they depend to some degree on outputs of other group members. When you are in a group, your success in performing a particular task is dependent on what other members of the group are doing. So interdependence is critical. Interaction, social interaction, to accomplish the goal requires some form of verbal or non-verbal communication and interaction. There must be some communication between members of the group. Then the perception that you belong to a group, perception of a group. All members of the group must agree they are, in fact, part of a group, and they can define that group and define boundaries of that group. And of course, they must have some commonality of purpose. All the members of the group come together to serve or attain a common goal. Then, favoritism. Members of the same group are positively prejudiced toward other members and tend to discriminate in their favor. So you belong to a group and you discriminate other people as not belonging to a group. 3, 4 things that characterize what social groups are as a summary of our definitions. The sociality of groups. I'm picking out this word sociality because groups get together for political reasons, for economic reasons, and sometimes the idea of society does not really feature in their relationships. I focus on sociality of groups to look at that idea that groups come together not for just an immediate function, economic or political, but there's a level of relationships that are social. So humans are most highly social animal, and groups is the most common exhibition of sociality. Many animals, a few of them are an exception, are individual, and they don't have to interact with other. Human beings, actually what defines human beings and separates human beings from animals is the ability for high level of social interdependence, okay, and interaction. A social group exhibits some degree of social cohesion. That group is not loosely there. There is some glue that puts them together, something that glues members of that group together. Social cohesion, how does it come about? It is formed through shared interests, values, or some social ethnic background or kinship ties. There must be some, where does this glue come from? It comes from shared interest. And then there must be some level of identity and awareness that you belong to a group. So we have this process of interaction and interdependence among members of a group, which will contribute to social cohesion, and this social cohesion is strengthened by the common and shared interests, and then a group identifies itself as such, as a group. Okay. Another way of summarizing this, just the blue words that you can pick out: common motives and goals of a group, structure and roles and interdependence, statuses and relationships. These statuses refers to the different roles and positions that members of a group occupy, norms and values that define a group, sanctions, privileges, sanctions to non-group members, privileges for group members, obligations of group members, self-definition, as you define yourself as a group, and even you have a name for that group. Okay. Now, from our discussion, then what is not a social group? Sometimes we have people getting together and they don't meet the definition of what we have been looking at to define a social group. For instance, an aggregate or a crowd of people standing in a line to vote does not qualify to be a social group, because there are many things that define a social group. What a social group? People who are standing in a line to vote are not interacting. People who are standing in a line to vote they don't depend on one another. People who are standing to vote or waiting for a public transport are not aware of them. They don't share values. They may share. The only thing that is putting them together are circumstances and perhaps an objective which is supposed to be achieved within a very short period of time. This is an aggregate or a crowd. Fans in a football match do not qualify to be a social group. Okay? Then you have a class of people, for instance, millennials or university students who interact, but they have no sense of personal awareness of one another. They will look at themselves as university students, but they belong to a class. They don't constitute as social groups. Then you have got also committees or members who are participating in a conference or in a meeting. They lack the sociality outside their goals and activities. They don't qualify. These groups lack most of the features used to define social groups: common goals, sociality, interaction, identity, social awareness, norms and values that define what a group is. Okay. So we now have some good understanding of what a social group is. The items that you can pull out to describe what a group is. We are introducing a new word here: dynamics, group dynamics. Okay, group dynamics, the dynamics perhaps explain what all those things are that you've been talking about: the structure, the goals, the activities, the norms, the interactions, the relationships. All those things fit into what dynamics is. But it's a sociological concept, so let us define exactly what it is: the complexity, processes, the becoming, development, and behavior of a group. A group is complex. It has internal processes among its group members. It starts, it forms, develops, and it behaves. So all these things define what group dynamics are. But let's get some fewer explanations again. They answer the questions. Group dynamics answers to the question of why groups are formed and how they are organized, the internal nature of groups, structure and functional processes, the way they affect individual members, other groups, and as a group as a whole, the changes which affect the group and the factors that sustain group cohesiveness or those that threaten the group. All these things define what group dynamics is. Okay, let's get now an authoritative definition of group dynamics. According to Cartwright and Zanta, 1968, group dynamics is a system of behaviors. I like this word system. A system of behaviors and psychological processes occurring within a social group, intragroup, or between social groups to different groups. It refers to the nature of groups, the laws of their development, and their interrelations with individuals and other groups and larger institutions. Words to mark out from Cartwright and Zander's definition is a system not only of anything, but of behaviors that are also psychological processes within a social group, but also distinguishing between different groups. So each group has got its own psychological processes and its own system of behaviors. It is the nature of groups, dynamics also the nature of groups, the structure, the roles of different group members, then the laws. These are the rules and regulations, the norms of their development and their interactions or interrelations with the individuals, other groups, and even other larger institutions. Very good definition of group dynamics. Okay. Let's summarize out of this definition. These are the questions that we answer when we are interested in group dynamics. Why and how the group emerged and how it developed, which we refer to as group formation. What is the size of the group? 200-300 people. Its composition and leadership. That is the structure of the group. What are the activities of the group? What does the group do? What are the activities that you preoccupy the members? How do the members interact, influence each other? That's interaction. Then what are the processes used by the members to share information and group-related issues? Communication is critical in a group. And what keeps the group together? So the red words, pull them out as keywords that you can use to define what group dynamics is. So towards the end of our lesson now, this is the assignment that I would want you to think about from what we have been discussing. Okay, all of us belong to one or two groups. It is unlikely that you don't belong to any particular group. Even a family is a group. Or your peer group, the group that you belong to as students in a club or an association, is a group. Okay. Or you know somebody who belongs to one or two groups. So I would want you to evaluate the following categories of why you or one belongs to the group. Why do you belong to that group? Is it for psychological reasons, the belongingness, the friendship and all that? Is it for social reasons? Okay. Then is it for material reasons, or it is for reasons that you are a member of that group without even volunteering yourself to do that? So you list down for the particular group that you are in, the psychological reasons for that group. And it's also possible that you are in a group and you are not in that group for any psychological reasons. You could be in a group without for any material reasons. So you also list down or just say, that particular category does not apply to me in my involvement in that particular group. Okay, I think this is the end of our lesson 1, and I thank you for being attentive. We will move to our next lesson in a few minutes.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.